I'm going to discuss hybrid games a little bit. Mikael's going to continue, and then I'm going to introduce you to our game, Goblin Slayer Slayer.
And I'm going to continue with that on our game, the Command Overdrive. And after that, we'll have a Q&A session.
So about hybrid games, the definitions vary, but overall hybrid games refer to games that combine both traditional board game elements and digital elements. That can look like your typical board game and an application to go with the game. And well-known examples include World of Yoho and XCOM, the board game. So the genre is very diverse, and it can manifest itself in conceptual, technological, artifactual, thematic, and functional ways. And common elements, like I mentioned before, include technology in form of application that can aid the players in data management, computing, storytelling, resource management, and randomization. But the thing is that it's not an application on top of the board games. The elements work together, creating a hybrid game experience.
Continuing on that, on some of the possibilities of hybrid games and how they differ from basic board games. One of the greatest examples of how to use the hybrid model is to allow some of the game elements to be displayed in digital form. For example, AR games are very good at bringing the digital elements to the real world and creating some of the greatest animations on the spot, but that basic board games cannot do. Also, the digital side allows information to be held and kept secret from other players and updated on there, which is one of the greatest ways to utilize the digital side on the addition to the physical side of board games. Communication can be on multiple levels. You can at the same time talk to your friends about the game while you are playing, but you can also use the digital side to talk secretly to the other players, which does allow some interesting mechanics. The basic board games, once you have built them, they're there. You cannot update them anymore unless you add some add-ons, but the hybrid games can be updated after the initial release, and some monetization methods for long term are also allowed, for example using ads or using a service, subscription-based service. Continuing on some of the challenges, it is typical for multiplayer games and board games that they do require a lot of designing and testing, and you need to start it early on in order to make the game you want to make. It does require expertise from multiple fields. You need to have people who know the digital side, you need to have people who know how to make the physical elements, people who know how to lead the process. Combining digital and physical elements can also be quite difficult. It's not just a board game, it's not just a digital game. There will be times when you have this element and you think, wait, maybe we could make a digital version of this, or maybe we could just use a card to get all the information we want. But sometimes it is hard to make that decision at that what is digital, what is actually physical on your game. But you need to make it so that it doesn't feel unnatural that this element is actually on the app and this element is actually on the board.
Also, optimizing the player's attention can prove a problem, because if one person spends a lot of screen time, it can take away from the discussion or the group elements. So that was definitely a challenge for us, but I think we tackled it. So the game we made is called Goblin Slayer Slayer. So this is our team. We had 2 game designers, 2 programmers, a graphics designer, and 2 people working on the production. So quite a small team. So basically what Goblin Slayer Slayer is a modified dungeon crawler strategy game played on cards and on the application. But the thing is that it turns the traditional dungeon crawler setting upside down. So while typically you would start at the surface level and dig your way down, in this game you start at the bottom, fighting your way up to the surface. Elements of deception are essential. You can deceive other players because each player has their own main objective that the other players don't know. So while you encounter enemies, you also have to deceive other players. The game consists of a deck of cards, of 100 cards, and a mobile app, and it's suited for 4 players. Here's the evolution of one of the cards. So as you can tell, the cards play around with different tropes, but they're sort of upside down. So instead of having like human adventurers, your human paladins or your human fighters, you have like these goblin archetypes. This is the most basic card, I think, that we have, this goblin rogue. And each card has a feat, the bottom text. But the enemies also have their own feats, so you have to sort of combine the 2 effects to see the outcome. So in basic terms, each player joins the game with their own mobile device, and they can either host or join. They are given a personal goal, their main objective. They include having the most goblins, or having the most gold, or most trophies, or remaining as the sole survivor. The basic loop is a discussion of the route. There are fights, there is this game store, there are different events, and there are 10 levels in total. There are easy enemies, middle ground enemies, and sort of like boss fights. And after each round, there is loot, and there is 1 survivor. So each round you lose cards, but you may also gain cards. There are few win conditions, but the game keeps going on even if one of the players drops out. And by the end, the application renders the points in neutral scoring. And this is where the application comes in handy, because you don't have to keep all of the different numerical values in your mind. The application does that for you. We had our own graphic designer, which was great. They did all of the art in the game. Here's a few examples. And there's the application view. We came across a lot of different challenges along the way, the biggest of which was overriding app effects with cards, because the application does not know what's going on in the game board table. And another big issue was the rule hierarchy, because not only the goblins have different abilities, but also the in-game enemies in the application. So we had a lot of like special cases that we needed to solve. But I think we managed that. There are a few special cases stated in the rulebook, but overall you can play the game by just reading the cards. So no need to like delve deep into the rules. Also, an interesting issue was law text and mechanical text getting mixed up. So we decided to bold like important words and hope that the cards are like intuitive to the players. So in the first test rounds, the game wasn't very user-friendly, but I think we managed to make it more so. Also, narrowing down the target audience was a pretty difficult task because, you know, the game plays around with like a lot of RPG tropes. So the player like needs to be aware of those tropes first in order to, you know, get the jokes. But we also wanted the game to be like accessible to a wider audience. So that was an issue along the way, but I think we tackled that also. Along with that comes the making or not making the game rule heavy, because by making the game rule heavy, you can make it more interesting also, but it would requires a lot of like studying the rules beforehand, and nobody likes to do that. So, and lastly, I think encouraging both cooperation and deception. It wasn't too easy, but it also is sort of like a core mechanic of the game. Technical challenges included WebSockets, connection struggled to stay alive on sleep, so the app would like go dead randomly, and it was also pretty difficult to integrate and keep track of physical elements in the app. Also, a functioning app in the Unity editor is not exactly a functioning Android build, but we had a lot of testing constantly along the way, and issues arrived as we tested, and issues were resolved along the way as well. Like mentioned before, it's an Android app, so we had a lot of like Android-specific technical issues. But luckily, hybrid games are great because you can fix these issues once the game is released. The final product looks like a deck of cards. There's the application, of course, but also an instruction sleeve and a G20 die, all in the same package. So it's pretty portable. Thank you for your attention. I think Mikael will continue now.
All right, and then we'll continue on to talk about the next game, which is the Command Overdrive Corporate Takedown, which is a hybrid game set on a cyberpunk theme involving hackers and an evil corporation. But before we talk about the actual game, I want to a little bit talk about our team and the project behind this. So our team involves 5 people: me, who has been the game producer and programmer for this game; Niina Muhonen, who has been our awesome product designer and graphic artist; Petru Pitkänen, who has done the lead game design for this game; and Sauli Hänninen and Ekku Sipilä, who has done the programming. The idea started with these ideas of secret information that we could hold in the app, and roles that maybe could be secret, negotiation that could happen on the board as well as by using the app, some backstabbing, meaning you could betray your teammates, and we wanted to set that on a cyberpunk theme, operated on phones and on the board. But not all of those ideas came on the final game, but this is where we started. After this, we developed a game idea that we wanted to work on. And it's now been 5 months, and over 1,000 hours have been spent on this game. A lot of it has been gone to designing and testing. On the right, you can see, on the left actually, you can see our earliest designs of the maps and some of the markers we used for that testing. Active communication have been one of the key parts of the project. I would say it's one of the key parts in any game project, talking to each other about what the game should have. It's one of the best ways to develop a game. Hard work and determination, even though it's a bit of a cliche to talk about that, it is good to note that these games do not come overnight, and without the motivated people behind this could have never happened. And of course, you have to have fun along the way. The best ideas comes actually when everyone's having fun. And here's some earliest designs of our app, as well as some of the marks and phone stands on the product side. When we started testing these games, you have to test these games early on, and it's hard to do because you don't have the actual app. So how do you do it is you have one person acting as the app, and you draw everything else on paper. And that's the way we started testing these games and developing it further and further as we moved on. This was the slide I have to talk about our problems, but since we really didn't have any, it was one of the smoothest projects I've had ever actually, so there's not much to talk about here. And now that I've bored you about the details of our project, we can actually talk about the final game and what it actually includes. The Command Overdrive is a cyberpunk theme game where a group of hackers is trying to infiltrate the evil corporation's office and steal important information and get it leaked into the press. The game is played on Android devices as well as on an actual game board. Our physical game set includes the board, as well as set pieces for each of our characters, markers for different events of the game, such as alarms, doors getting locked, security camera moving, and players getting captured. The game also includes phone stands, which let you hold your phone on the table as you're playing the game, as well as covers that prevent other people from seeing what's happening on your phone. They also include the characters that we have, so players can easily see which character you're playing. The game is asymmetrical in nature, meaning one player plays the corporation and other players, 2 to 4 players, play as the hackers. The hackers are trying to get to the CEO's office and steal the information, but before they can do that, they have to first unlock 3 of the 4 locks throughout the map, which are the pink markers. The corporation tries to prevent that by moving guards around the map and patrolling. The catch of the game is that while the corporation always moves on the board, where everyone can see where the guards are, the hackers move in secret using the app, trying to not cause any alarms or not be seen by the corporation. The game ends if the corporation ever catches all the players, or if the hackers manage to get the information from the CEO's office and leave the building. Most of the things that the hackers do in the game can cause an alarm, which will signal the corporation that, hey, there's a person possibly here. There are also false alarm rooms that allow the hackers to confuse the corporation by placing an alarm on a place that it actually didn't happen. But obviously the corporation can't distinguish which alarm was real and which one wasn't. The app has different looks for each of our players. All of our characters have different colors, distinguishing colors, as well as their own abilities, which includes placing hologram of yourself on the map, as well as turning invisible. The players actually can't really talk about their position openly, since the corporation could hear where they are. Instead, they can send messages using the app to each other. On the basic note, they can only send one message per round to one person, but if they are in the communication room, they can send it to everybody. Each of our hackers, as mentioned, have a distinct look and a game piece. Most of our hackers, or most of our game pieces are not actually on the board, but if they are seen by the corporation by a window or by the security camera, they will be put on the board. The hackers will also be on the board if they are captured by the corporation, which prevents them from doing most of the actions in the game. The other hackers can, of course, save the captured players, but it can be difficult since corporation always knows where they are and tries to prevent them from getting saved. And this is probably the most of the stuff that I have to talk to you about. The game is really fun, so I hope that everyone who is here has the chance to play both of our games actually. But I think now is a good time to move on to questions.
We can use the mic as a microphone. Yeah. First of all, super cool. Thank you so much. Super excited to test out everything. There are probably a ton of questions that could be gone through, but we only have so little time. So first I'm going to prioritize. Are there any questions from the audience immediately? Yes?
On one of the slides at the back, they showed the layout of the map. And there was a tiny room, I think it was room 39. What is that room for?
And if I may rephrase the question to the mic so that everybody can hear. So what was room number 39 for?
39 is a closet, and it is a place where you can go to hide. There's basically no other use for it. There was a consideration that we would include achievements in the game, which one of them would be if every single player is found on that closet, but it's still not implemented, sadly.
Okay.
Amazing. Yeah, my take on this is that it was really cool to see that what the design of hybrid games actually kind of allows, or what it can increase into the regular gaming experience, whether it's only digital or only board. And this hiding information, you seem to both kind of tackled it very, very well. So having secrets from other players and also like having this element of deception in your game kind of makes perfect use of that. For the both of you, perhaps Oona first, was this the first time you were designing a game, or do you have a lot of experience in prior?
This was the first like official project that I've done. I've done some personal like sort of like hobby-like game development programs, but not of this magnitude, not yet.
All right, and same question, Mikael.
Well, this wasn't the first one for me. I have done some game design, and most of it has been through University of Jyväskylä's studies. And it is also important to note that me or our lead game designer, he wasn't the one to design this game. It was the whole team that participated in the design process, which allowed this game to be possible.
And because there's a lot of depth in these games, so that's the most impressive thing. How long was the course?
How long was the what?
The course in the university. How long did you have to work on this?
So this project was worked on for around 5 months.
Okay. It's very impressive, and would like to hear from both of you that what were the biggest personal learnings along the way, because it's a long learning journey. So Oona first.
I think combining the different elements. I've only ever done game design, as in the text, the game mechanics, but also now having to incorporate the coding, the programming into this. It was a whole new world for me.
All right. And what about Mikael?
It's a bit of the same with Oona, but it also one big thing about I have learned about this since my experience was basically on digital games, but since we actually had to make all of the actual physical pieces, that whole process was also completely new world, and then combining that to the digital world was sort of a challenge, but we tackled it very well, in my opinion.
One of the things that you talked about is that it's important, like everybody who have been making games know, that it's important to kind of test the concept from early on, but it's difficult when you don't have like all the bits and pieces and you're lacking the digital app even and so on. I would like to hear from both of you that how did you in practice kind of solve this problem? How do you make that process work when you need like, okay, you can have like probably Legos for your characters and stuff like that, but the most important thing, the game being hybrid, is combining that digital to the physical. So how do you kind of simulate that effect? Mikael, you can go first now.
That's a big question. So a little bit talked about it already, that it is a difficult process to start, since you have to design the digital side and the physical side, and where do you actually start. And the first thing is to create the idea and then make it a concept and just try to test it. Even if it sucks at first, test it and see what mechanics work, what doesn't work, and then try it again. And testing it usually requires that there is one person who acts as the app. Meaning he'll tell other players that this is what the game would show you if actually it was here, but it isn't here yet. And just drawing the basic markers and not worrying about if the graphics are what they are, just making the game work and testing and working it from that.
Amazing, having a person for an app. Like hiring summer interns, you get to be an app. I love it. What about you, Oona?
We also did that, but it was pretty natural for us because the application is the dungeon master in our game. But on top of that, we also utilized existing like board game pieces, so not everything had to be hand drawn. So we kind of just tested and took note of what's difficult for a human to do. What would be easier if an application did that instead?
Thank you. At this point, asking again whether anyone wants to use this opportunity to pose questions. Yes?
Is this planned to be actually released, actually put on sale?
The question was that whether these games are actually going to be released.
As of right now, no. Of course, we would like them to be on the sale. It would be really cool to see this on, to see it on a store somewhere. But as it's right now, we really can't with our resources. If there is someone who wants to contact us, we'll be really happy to work it further. But as it is right now, it's really cool game, but we have no resources to make it publicly available to everyone.
What about you, Oona?
As of right now, no, but we would love to. It would be totally up for production, like as it is.
Yeah, sounds like because it shows that you put a lot of thought into it, and the final product looks really cool. So it like they both look like they could be bought from the store as they are. So perhaps the network of Expa can help you around with this question. So definitely advising both teams to mingle your assets off tonight and in the future as well. And yeah, I think time-wise we are pretty much done right now, but the evening is young and everybody here locally gets to test the games. That's super nice. But for now, thank you so much, University of Jyväskylä and Mikael and Oona. And yeah, I think this probably concludes our broadcast for tonight. So thank you for all the people viewing at home, and we shall continue it from here locally. See ya!